Hello, welcome again to FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Bob Scarborough.
And we are the FAIRtax Guys. Oh, you have your banner and I don't have my cube today. Yeah. Oh, well, I guess
it's in the shop getting oiled up.
One of us is on the ball. Well, how you doing, bud?
I'm doing great. I hope everybody out there is doing wonderful. It's been a beautiful week here in Piedmont, North Carolina. And I know it's been nice in Florida because it's always sunny in Florida.
Yes, but I remembered going back last week to Jade Wally's World on inflation. Gas hit $4.49 a gallon here in Central Florida this week, and so I'll tell you what, we need to get Jade's inflation fighting tool up and running really quick, i.e., the FAIRtax.
I've got an idea, and I think this is something that we can do because, well, by the time this show's airs, North Carolina's primary will have taken place.
Mm-hmm.
But between now and then, if the primaries for some of you might be a little bit later, call all of the candidates running and say, here's something that you might want to consider. Just a real quick fairtax.org. If you got an opportunity to email them, put the link in and just say, this is a game changer for where we are right now. In our economy, in world affairs, you want to take control. This is the way to do it. And
too bad that John Gaver is moving to Panama. We could clone him and send him out to all of the different states that we're doing.
Well, there is this technology called Zoom, and I'm sure
I know.
Like we're using right now.
We'll still talk to him on occasions, but
Panama.
He won't have quite the access to candidates that he had in this past primary season.
That's right. Thank you, John. Thanks for working on all of that, John. Thank you. And don't forget on several of the works that we have on fairtax.org. For some reason my mind just goes blank on me. Jim,
you're thinking of the Grassroots Corner series that John Guest wrote on how to do all what he does.
You go back and look at those because that's information that can be used now and in the future, because we always have to be plowing new rows with individuals who may be seeking election now and in the future. So whether it's between now and the time your primary is, or between now and the time of the general election, if you've already had your primary, or it might be a local, it might be a state candidate, somebody, the information that's there can be used to generate conversations about the fair tax.
And I think we've already found out that it is much more productive to try to elect people who are already supporting the fair tax than it is to try to change the minds of people who are sitting in office and are not on board with the fair tax. So that's a discussion for a whole nother day. But I tell you what, I missed it last week when we were talking to Jade Wally. There are some goodies in our congress.gov segment to get to. Of course, again, what we're doing, you go to congress.gov. You put the words Internal Revenue Code in quotes in the search bar up there at the top of the page. On the left side, make sure you've checked only legislation and only in the current Congress. And as of the day we're recording this, that search brings back 1,673 hits, including HR 7751. This one, Bob, this sounds familiar. Tell me if you've heard this before. To amend the Internal Revenue Code to provide for a gasoline tax holiday and for other purposes. Now that one, if you read what it says, it was just introduced, yesterday. But I think we've seen that before, haven't we?
They've talked about that, and it would be perfect. I mean, and the states ought to be doing that too, but then you have depending on how your roads are, funded in your state, it's federal transportation tax takes care of some of the road work, but there's plenty of crews out there. You know how it is in the summer. If you're going to lay asphalt, you have to do it when the weather's warm so it'll cure properly. But I wonder what the discussion is about how to tackle, like, for example, in North Carolina, 37 cents of every gallon. You have a tax of 37 cents that goes to the state. some of that goes to the DOT, the Department of Transportation, obviously. For some of the road work, they have different buckets that they put the money in. And so, yeah, I've heard, I mean, from a federal standpoint, what is it, about 8 cents or something like that goes on every gallon?
I think I should have looked it up, but I didn't. If I'm not mistaken, the federal gas tax is just under, I think it's 18 cents a gallon on gasoline and 24 cents a gallon on diesel fuel. Now, don't quote me on that. I may be off, but those are the numbers that ring in my head. But
Right.
if H.R. 7751 passes and is signed by the president, we will get a gas tax holiday of some kind. There's no text in there, so I don't know how much or for how long, but that's just there. And moving along, here's another one that has no text in it, so I couldn't dig in. All I've got is the description here. This is S 4218, a bill to amend the Internal Revenue Code to deny foreign tax credits or deductions with respect to taxes paid or accrued to the Russian Federation and the Republic of Belarus, to provide for the denial of certain other tax benefits in connection with the invasion of Ukraine and for other purposes. I have to file that one under, what the heck is that doing in the tax code?
We're going to do an investigative report on that very thing. What makes the tax code so attractive? What makes the tax code so attractive to be the launching point for all these bills?
I don't know, but that's it. That tells you that the tax code is just so intimately woven into every aspect of everything that we do in this country. And there's no way to fix it. You just have to yank it all out by the roots and replace it with a fair tax. And that's what we're trying to show people, just how broken the system already is and how more broken the Congress critters want to make it. And hopefully we can convince enough people that they need to get behind us and help us just get rid of the whole thing and bring in the fair tax. Now, this one caught my eye. Now, there are probably not a whole lot of folks out there that are going to understand this, but I am a private pilot, so I've had some private training. And there's a little piece of equipment in an airplane called a transponder that broadcasts some information back down to the ground that the controllers can see. And one of the things that transponder does, it uniquely identifies your aircraft. And an aircraft that has an in-flight emergency of some kind is instructed to put code 7700 into their transponder, so the controllers on the ground know that, hey, this airplane has an emergency. That's why the 7700 HR 7700 jumped up at me. This would be an aviation emergency, but it's to amend the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 to provide for additional recovery rebates to taxpayers. We can call that the Inflation Fueling Act of 2022 if that passes.
Say that one more time. It does what? It recoups something?
No, to amend the Internal Revenue Code to provide for additional recovery rebates to taxpayers. They're going to try to buy more votes by doling out more tax money that they don't have, which is going to fuel inflation. And so I think 7,700 is a really good number for that bill.
Send the distress signal back down to the control tower.
Yeah, that's the international code for putting in your transponder if your aircraft has an in-flight emergency. So this is a representative, I can't even read it, Shifless McCormick. She's in, where it is? Actually here in Florida, District 20. So they want to provide additional recovery rebates, which means they want to add more fuel to the inflation fire. And since that's not really our issue, I'll leave that right there. But the 7,700 did catch my attention. Now, this one caught my attention too. HR 7684. This is the No Tax Breaks for Radical Corporate Activism Act. How's that for a name? This one comes from Florida too. I can recognize this guy's name. Brian Mast is the name of it. And this one actually does have some text in it. It says this is to amend the Internal Revenue Code to deny the trade or business expense deduction for the reimbursement of employee costs of child gender transition procedures or to travel to obtain an abortion. We're gonna have to tread really carefully here, because neither of those issues, gender transition nor abortion, is our issue. I kind of was hesitant to add this one to the list, but just to show you, doesn't matter what the issue is, somebody's going to tie it back to the tax code.
Does it make it a part of the Appropriations Committee's responsibility when it is part of the tax code, more so than if it isn't? Do you see what I'm saying? I mean, I wonder why. And again, that whole brouhaha in Florida, which is for a whole nother show, by the way, because all we're doing is underscoring the lunacy of some of the presentations within Congress.gov for the purposes of introducing bills using the tax code. That one that you just mentioned is a hot button issue right now for a lot of people. And I guess what they're trying to do is figure out how to accommodate something that hasn't even happened yet, which is, was the draft opinion from the Supreme Court a few weeks ago that it just is not anything to do with the tax code, should not have anything to do with the tax code.
If I'm reading this right, this just simply says if your employer helps reimburse expenses that an employee has for the gender transition procedure, child gender transition, or to go for an abortion, that whoever wrote this bill, let's see, go back to, I got his name earlier, Brian Mast here in Florida, wants to deny that employer a tax credit for the expenditure there. So it's pretty easy to see which side of that debate he's on. And again, we're not going to go there. I point that out only to show you how deeply the tax code is woven into every issue that you can possibly imagine. And that's just absolutely insane.
I've got an opportunity in the next few days, because and of course we're recording this weeks before our primary here in North Carolina, but I'll have an opportunity to ask a couple of incumbents just a real simple question. Why are you using the tax code to introduce bills? Please explain to me why that occurs. Is that just how it's been done since the beginning of time, or since you've been in office? What's the deal? Because it just, and what you just read was in the last couple of them, for that matter, it raises questions. Why do we have to use the tax code to do that?
Why do you have to use the tax code to try to support one side, especially if it's as hot button an issue as those things are? Let's move on here, because the clock's still ticking. One more, HR 7677. This is the Supporting American Printed Circuit Boards Act of 2022. And this one actually does have some text in it to provide incentives for the domestic production of printed circuit boards and for other purposes. And this is pretty cool. It says what
other purpose could there be?
Okay. So subpart D, I'm reading from the text of this bill. Subpart D of Part 4 of Subchapter A of Chapter 1 of the Internal Revenue Code is amended by inserting after Section 45L a new Section 45M, credit for the purchase or acquisition of printed circuit boards manufactured in the United States. Now, I'm not going to go through all the rest of it, other than to mention that it does, get this, our tax code already contains the definition of municipal solid waste. If this passes, it will contain the definition of what a printed circuit board is, and then it will also contain the definition of what the word manufactured means.
Oh, yeah.
I am not making that up. It's all in there. HR 7677.
Love it. Love it. Fair tax, pass the fair tax on consumption, IRS, all this whole mess goes away. And that might be part of the hesitation of our incumbents, the folks that are already in Washington. That might be one of the reasons why they're not interested in changing, because they'll have to come up with a whole new way of doing things.
Yeah, well, they wouldn't have to come up with a whole new way of funding the government. The fair tax would take care of that. And then if they wanted to do if they wanted to do all this other stuff on the side, they would have to pass specific legislation to do that, not bury it in the tax code. That's a point that Steve Hayes makes all the time in the chairman's reports. You can read those at fairtax.org. But time's slipping away from us. I think that's enough fun for 1 week in Congress.gov. And you sent, I've got to give you some props here, bud. because when we lost Ron Malero, Ron was one of the best. I think Elaine helped him too. Was one of the best I've ever seen. He was always looking for articles and reading the various different publications and online sources, looking for stuff that we could use. And I say you have done really well following in his footsteps, finding articles and sending them to me. So I appreciate that. And one you sent me
You're welcome.
One you sent this week. The IRS destroyed 30 million paper information returns due to a backlog. We've been saying we've kind of taken a bit of a holiday from bashing the IRS, but I tell you what, there is just so much to get on them about. And it was amazing that what strikes me about this, the IRS says we don't have the resources to process these 30 million returns, so we're just going to throw them away. So what happens if that's one of your returns, and then 2 years down the road they say, wait a minute, you didn't file your taxes for this year? Well, I did, but you tore my return up.
Yeah.
Can you imagine the can of worms that's going to be?
And I guess the statute of limitations is what, 7 years, where you have to make sure that you keep everything.
I'm not sure what it is on income tax returns. I think it's 7 years they can go back and get you for it.
So the article in Accounting Today says, this was by Michael Cohn, May 9th, 2022. Now listen carefully, because we're going to give you another date inside the article. The Internal Revenue Service decided to destroy an estimated 30 million paper filed information return documents in March 2021, almost a year and a few months ago.
This article came out a couple of days ago describing an event that took place over a year ago.
And and the word is they decided to destroy. So somebody's sitting over there going, that's a lot of paper. Yeah. 30 million. That's a lot. My wife would debate that I have that in the top drawer of my one filing cabinet and half that in the bottom drawer of the other filing cabinet. But March 2021, they did this because of their inability to process the backlog of paper tax returns, according to the report. And
I wonder if that means that all of the withholding that was withheld from the people who filed those returns, they don't get their refunds, and the government just conveniently keeps it all.
Well, and then, you kind of wonder, well, where is that at? And then you don't want to get involved. You have to spend 2 years on the phone on hold waiting for the person to tell you, well, we can't find where you filed anything, Mr. Jones. And, but the report was released probably what's today, Friday the 13th, when we're recording this. And so the report was released earlier from the article about over 2 weeks ago now.
On Monday, yeah.
Okay. By the Treasury Inspector General. The Treasury Inspector General for Tax Administration noted that the IRS typically uses information return documents for post-processing compliance matches to identify taxpayers who don't accurately report their income. The report focuses on how the IRS should be doing more to encourage electronic filing. Now, that is the underscore right there. They're doing more, should be doing more, according to the Treasury Inspector General for Tax Administration, should be doing more to encourage electronic filing of business tax returns and reduce paper filing.
It's interesting that link in the article. There's a link in the article to the actual report here, and the thing that really caught my eye on that: why did the taxpayer inspector general do this audit? It says this audit was initiated because the IRS continued inability to process backlogs of paper file tax returns that contributed to management's decision to destroy an estimated 30 million paper filed information returns in March of 2021. And so there it is. Why did we do this? Because the IRS has no clue what they're doing. Well, they're not able. They're not able to do what they're supposed to be doing. So I got an idea. Why don't we get rid of them?
Yeah. We talk about all these things and they go, and I'll bet you collectively the folks that push all this paper around at the IRS would probably go, man, we need somehow we need to get the pill, the magic cyanide pill that we crack with our tooth and just we fall over and the whole thing goes away. Well, that's the FAIRtax is the answer. Tax on consumption.
hope I don't get too inside baseball here, but let me ask you a question. What would happen to someone there at your radio station if a salesperson brought in a bunch of copy and they were supposed to produce the radio spots to go out on the air, and the person said, "I've just got too much to do, and I'm going to throw this one away, so I'm not going to produce this one." So the guy's commercial never gets on the air. What would happen to that person at your radio station?
6 paces, turn and fire.
Yes, I know. I've never done that. I have been tempted to do that when I worked at various different radio stations, but I never did. But that's just it.
We used to have a saying that if it was on Friday and the person who scheduled the ads couldn't get it on the computer log, that we would go in and write it on the actual computer log and take the money that day and produce the ad right then. And it's all throughout the decades of and not just radio stations. I will say there are probably a lot of other people. We won't get into the United States Postal Service and first class mail found in black bags and garbage.
Yeah, there's just too much, so I'm going to throw it away.
Yeah, and so you wonder, well, where's Aunt Lucy's letter? She always sends me a letter on my birthday with $50 in it. So, it becomes a question of integrity, I think, with the people that are working, that these decisions that the Internal Revenue Service decided to destroy. It wasn't kind of oops,
Yeah. It wasn't inadvertent. The Treasury Inspector General for Tax Administration simply said, we audited these guys because they're not able to process their backlog, and that contributed to the management's decision to destroy an estimated 30 million paper filed information return. You hit on it earlier. They're trying to get people to file electronically.
That's right. And the big part about that is develop a service-wide strategy to prioritize and incorporate all forms of e-filing, develop processes and procedures to identify and address potentially non-compliant corporate filers, and develop processes and procedures to ensure that penalties are consistently assessed against business filers that are non-compliant with e-filing requirements. And I mean, I can understand the speed of getting the information in. It comes from this computer here at the tax accountant all the way to the Internal Revenue Service. I understand that it makes sense, but now all of a sudden we've got 2 people or half a dozen that are sitting at the Internal Revenue Service that are focused on this, and why. And then that goes back to our stance 100% is let's just end it. It's an immoral act anyway, that tax on income. It needs to be a tax on consumption, and that's what the FAIRtax does. It brings about a tax on consumption.
And that is a perfect segue, talking about consumption, into something we have not talked about here on FAIRtax Power Radio in a while, and we really need to, and that is the FAIRtax Marketplace. If you would like to consume something and support the FAIRtax at the same time, FAIRtaxMarketplace.org is a good way to do that.
I'm going to see about getting our local craft brewery on there.
Yeah, right after the Moravian Bakery, so I can get some more of their sugar cookies and sugar cake and all that good stuff.
You get furniture and food and drinks and kitchen equipment, lawn furniture, office supplies. If you go on there, and my thinking is this, and this is an appeal for both sides, for both the consumer side and the supplier side. Go on there, and if you sell, for example, on Amazon, there's no real difference other than the site. And we know that there's millions and millions of people on Amazon, for example. But think about how long it would take if you were a FAIRtax supporter, if you were a volunteer, if you were somebody who was interested in the FAIRtax Marketplace gives a certain percentage of the income from sales to Americans for Fair Taxation. And what that does is allows us to fuel initiatives that help promote. And the more opportunity that the ATTF has, Americans for Fair Tax,
AFFT. There we go.
So the Fair Tax initiatives that can be put out there will will be more focused, can be more focused, and maybe into certain areas where the word is not made it to the particular communities or the particular state. It gives us an opportunity to enhance the advertising. Everybody that's involved in the FAIRtax program, the volunteers, we are simply that. There is no paycheck on Friday that we get to go and cash a check and that kind of thing. And not that we're using the FAIRtax marketplace to look for that, but it just it enhances what we can do in promoting the FAIRtax. So if you're a business and you have something that you can sell online, please look at FAIRtaxmarketplace.com and consider putting your wares there. If you happen to have an account where you sell somewhere else, like the craft place Etsy, I think is the name of it, that lot of opportunity there. But consider the FAIRtax marketplace, or you may know somebody who has a service or something, or craft, or maybe a book or a video or something, self-help guides, that kind of thing. I think the FAIRtax marketplace would be a good place for it.
And on the vendor side, it costs nothing to be on there.
Right.
So
and when you sell something,
the commission you would pay only when you make a sale, and it's a much smaller commission than you'd pay to Amazon, that's for sure. But that would work. FAIRtax Marketplace. One other thing, we've got about a minute and a half here left. I want to mention we haven't touched on in quite a while either. This is the FAIRtax store. If you want to get a FAIRtax hat, to cover that crazy hair of yours over there, you could go to FAIRtaxstore.org and order things. Now, that store, I think, is really kind of a misnomer. It is not a money-making enterprise. It's just more of a, we're going to make these materials available to FAIRtax volunteers that want them. You can get the scrolling banners, you can get the bumper stickers. Shipping is free. So it is not, the FAIRtax store is not the moneymaker that the FAIRtax marketplace is designed to be.
Right.
But you can go there, FAIRtaxstore.org, and of course it may take you a while to get some stuff because of the supply chain issues and all that kind of messed up. Right. But FAIRtaxstore.org, go get you a FAIRtax hat there, bud, and we'll
I'll have it on next week.
Okay, all right. Well, I'll tell you what.
Job he did.
We sure appreciate everybody sharing these videos, telling your family and friends about FAIRtax Power Radio, sharing the podcast. We're on several different places, several different radio stations, but I'm afraid we are slap out of time for this edition of FAIRtax Power Radio. So again, thank you so much for watching and listening. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Bob Scarborough.
The FAIRtax guys reminding you once again that the FAIRtax is the only truly fair tax, and once you understand it,
you'll demand it.
So what would you do for her?
We've got several programs that will help her. We just need to find out how much she makes. But the good news is, the less she does, the more we can help.
Yeah.
If I may, with the FAIRtax, we wouldn't even tax her income. So the more she makes, the more she has.
But still, a consumption tax could eat up a lot of her income.
Which is why at the beginning of every month, we're actually going to give back all that she pays in taxes on basic necessities.
You're going to give her back her taxes?
Every month. On everything taxed on basic necessities. But we're also going to give it back to you and to every American citizen.